Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Am I talking close enough? Yes, awesome. So thank you so much for coming to join us today. I know that when you're at these really cool events, as someone who also came to FMX as a student, I know that going to the vendor talks are not always the top priority, so thank you for coming. It is going to be really awesome. I know that I'm very excited to learn from Gael as well. So before I officially introduce him today, I'm Charlie. I'm the product manager of Mari. I'm going to give you a really quick update on what came out in Mari 6 last year. I am going to talk super quick. As I said, I know I'm not the main event, and I want to get to the good stuff. So, in December of last year, we released Mari 6. It was an overwhelmingly positive release for us. We had a huge response from VFX studios all across the globe and also the individual users as well. A large reason for that positive response comes from the fact that throughout the year, we actually collaborate with studios quite a lot. This means we're constantly talking to them, we're constantly asking them for their feedback on different features, and we're really trying to ensure that everything that's going into Mari is exactly what they need for their texture artists to be working efficiently within the VFX pipeline. We then take all of this feedback and we organize them into what we call the 4 Ps, which are 4 key areas of Mari. And if you're a Mari artist, whether you're someone who's actually texturing, whether you're material designing, whether you're a pipeline TD, you're going to be touching on at least one, if not all, of these sections. We use these to then help us target features in the release and make sure that all the Mari users are going to benefit. So I'm going to quickly breeze through the features that we did. The pipeline features, as part of Mari 5, which came out the year before, we actually already removed the need for you to go and export your textures out of Mari, take them into your look dev tool like Katana, reset them up, reconnect them to your shader. Instead, this is actually all automated at export time with Mari's USD preview surface. So in Mari 6, we extended this to add support for Arnold and render-man shader context. They live alongside your USD preview surface so that a complete and final USD material can be generated right from Mari itself. We also removed some of the pain points for artists who are maybe springboarding between, say, Mari and Katana for their look development in order to verify looks for daily sessions. So Mari 6 was tackling this back and forth by giving you the opportunity to use Mari's interactive selection group tools in order to drive facet-based material assignments and then have these automatically assigned in your look dev package without having to go and manually do that yourself. For the painting feature, the much more fun and exciting things to talk about, Mari 6 introduced the extremely highly requested roller brush. So artists now have the ability to paint, not pipe. They can paint a tileable image across a brushstroke that follows the curves and contours of your movement. We also added support for storing Python snippets as shelf items, and these live alongside your materials and your custom procedurals. This gives artists a really great It gives them easier access to things like smaller script actions. They don't have to go and manually load them themselves. And it really was focused at encouraging a more collaborative texturing experience across studios where you have different artists of different technical skill levels all working together. And finally, Mari 6 also introduced the long-requested teleport node. So the teleport node is a node of 2 parts, the broadcaster and the receiver, and they are communicating across a hidden channel. This is primarily for cleaner, more decluttered node graphs, but also just general organization, and I think you will see some hefty node graphs with potentially some of Gael's work as well. It's been a really good opportunity for studios to start cleaning up and using these to their benefit. So these connections can be made inside and outside of nested groups and materials. They automatically connect when you import in, and we can quickly jump to and from broadcaster and receiver. And also, if you are like me, I am someone that suffers from strain injury in my wrist a lot. Artists, if you are not aware of your wrists, please do wrist exercises. But we added the ability to go and show your broadcasted node properties so you no longer have to go and drag across the node graph to find out where your broadcasting node is. And if you weren't ready to, if say your school isn't ready to move up to Mari 6 yet and you have Mari 5, we did also add this into 5.0v4 and 4.8v4 as well, so do take a look. So that is a really quick run through of Mari 6, probably the quickest I have ever run through Mari 6, so I apologize if I've been stumbling. But this year, We're not really going to tell you what projects we have, but I promise they are really exciting, and we are really looking forward to when we can talk to you about them all. But instead, I want to share some of the key concepts that we consider to be the cornerstones of what Mari 7 and beyond are going to deliver to you. So first and foremost, Mari 7 will be for the artist. Whether you are working in a studio or as an individual or a student, we will provide more tools that will power your creativity. We also know that learning Mari and teaching Mari is not always the easiest, and we do want to change that. And finally, we want Mari to be the favorite tool in your palette, the only texturing package that you'll need. So, most importantly though, we do actually want to hear from you. I am all ears. I do not care if you are in a studio, if you have a license, if you don't have a license, please come and give me your feedback. Give me all of your pain points, all your gripes. Me and the team were very excited to help you out, and we love listening to everyone. So do tell me what you'd like to see more of in Mari, what's holding you back in terms of learning Mari, and really what you need to enable you to learn it more efficiently. Send in your feature requests to support@foundry.com, and come and bother me about bugs if you really want to. I will listen. That's okay. There's no problem too minor or too small. We would love for you guys to join us in telling Mari's next chapter of its story. So, with that, I also want to take the opportunity to shout out that we do have a bunch of different resources available on our Foundry Learn page for all different skill levels, and we are continuously updating it with more tutorials from various different artists. For anyone who is hesitating to pick up Mari or is wondering, why should I use Mari versus another application, I hope that Gael's talk is going to explain that to you. But my suggestion is to try everything that you can, learn all the applications, learn all the theory and the texturing fundamentals, because those are going to be transferable skills. And yes, learning Mari is a great way to do that, and it's going to benefit you in any studio, any role, any texturing application. And you do have options available, including free licenses, so please do go have a look at our website, or come and grab me afterwards if you're not sure where to find anything, or if you want a picture of or pointer of any of these resources, please do let me know. I'm going to hand you over to the amazing Gael Koshenbaum. Gael's been working in the VFX industry for many years now, but 10 years, wow. He is frankly one of my favorite texture artists. I think I reached out to Gael several years ago, very much how I would have done as a student, and just said, hey, I really like that dinosaur that you made. Can you show me how you made it? And that has been the start of a really great colleague relationship as well. So I am very excited to learn with you guys, with what Gael is going to show us. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you, Gael.
Thank you, Charlie, for the great presentation, and thanks, guys, for being here. So I'm glad to have you for my presentation, and as Charlie has pointed out, I will be speaking about exploring the science of texturing with Mari. And this will be like a practical guide for you to understand how to explore the science of texturing, how to use things like Mari's viewport, how to use materials, nodes, layers, adjustment layers, and how to make sure that you can understand the tool as much as possible so you can really master your craft. And once you master your craft, you can go into like some amazing and really creative texturing. So first, I will start with this quick introduction, and I will start by telling you a little bit of who I am, a project I've been working on, the studio I worked on also, and then we'll start diving into Mari. We'll start with Mari for beginners, and I will give you some tooltips and how to really appreciate the software for what it can offer to you as a beginner, but also as someone who is like already know about texturing and want to dive into Mari and educate itself about using Mari for its node graph and all texturing aspects. Then we'll speak a little bit about science together. So we'll speak about the microfacet theory, and how this theory can help you to understand how to build your texturing and to build your surfacing. And we'll then apply that to Mari. Then I will show you a bit of my personal texturing workflow and how you can understand, how you can use like a procedural approach in Mari in order to make sure that you can texture everything and master your crafts through repetition and have a universal approach about color painting and mastering materials. So first, let's start with me. So Charlie has already done a really great presentation. I will just tell you once again, my name is Gael Kirschenbaum, and I'm a creature and character artist. I've been working in the industry for like almost 10 years, so it's been 9 years, and I've worked for a lot of different companies and a lot of different industries. I worked in VFX, I also worked in advertising, I worked in 3D printing, I worked in commercial AI, so a lot of different industry, a lot of different categories of work. And something that has been really important for me is to be able to show my skills and to help others to understand my skills. So that's why I'm also a lecturer. And I'm trying to help other artists to grow into the VFX industry. And I'm doing that by doing a lot of tutorials and showing a lot of breakdowns on my portfolio. Something that is also important about my profile, I will say, is that I'm a sculptor before all. And I'm saying that during a Mari presentation, which is a presentation about texturing. But for me, it's really important because being a sculptor means that I will understand a lot of things about the volume, the surface of a model. This will help me then to understand how to do some texturing, how to paint the surface, and how to create realistic materials. So let's start with my demo. Thank you. Thank you, guys. So this was my demo reel from 2019. Of course, I've been busy with a lot of projects since then, but as you all know, most of them are under NDA or I've been also participating to a lot of development, pipeline development, and this kind of stuff, which most of the time doesn't shine through public because it's under NDA, so we cannot really show it. But anyway, this is my work and mainly what I've been doing all of these years. And I've tried to focus a lot on how I can apply my understanding of anatomy. So as I told you, I'm a sculptor before all, so I learn a lot of what I'm doing in texturing thanks to my skills in anatomy. So for me, being a sculptor means that I always focus on surface quality and surface aspect. So whenever I'm doing a model, what I'm doing is that I'm sculpting a model from the inside out, meaning that I will work on the skeleton, I will start sculpting the skeleton, then I will work on the écorché, I will start sculpting the muscle, and I will start sculpting the fascia, the fat, and then the skin. All these layers are super important, and they are super important because they teach you a lot of things. They teach you how to master the volume, how to master the surface of your model, and how to make sure that your model is as defined as possible, is as accurate as possible. So when you will move on with your texturing, you will be able to have a good and an accurate surface quality. So this is the purpose of this presentation. So how Mari can help us to understand the fundamentals of surfacing. So we'll start by going into this first part, and this first part is Mari for beginners, how not to be overwhelmed. So this is something that maybe a lot of juniors or a lot of beginners are always scared about, and even some seniors are scared about. They're scared about like the kind of apparently complicated aspect of Mari, and they are scared about nodes, and they are scared about a lot of things in Mari. So we'll see together how not to be overwhelmed and how to have a constructive approach whenever we are doing texturing, and how we can layer things in order to make sure that everything is understandable and that we have a good master of our craft. And we will also see that this educated approach of doing texturing, so making sure that we understand everything that we are doing whenever we are doing texturing, will enlighten us to make sure that if we want to build a creature, if we want to build an asset, we will be able to do it because we understand what we are doing. So first, let's start by having a look at what I call the legacy workflow. So legacy workflow, mostly what I call legacy workflow is the layer or layer stack approach. I call that legacy workflow because what's happening within a layer stack or a list of layers is slightly different from what we are trying to do with Mari when we are using the node graph and when we really have an educated approach of our texturing. So layer stack, when we are looking at a layer stack, what's a layer stack? What's a layer, basically? So a layer is a lot of things. A layer is an all-in-one. A layer has some informations. It can have some color information. It can have some black and white information. It also have an opacity. It can have a mask. And it can have a fusion mode. So it's already too much, right? We have like too many information that are embedded into just one thing. And when we have all of this information that we need to deal with, we are starting to become slightly messy and not organized. So this kind of apparent messiness can lead to uncertainty and is not really what we are trying to achieve when we really want to master texturing. This, on the opposite side, is more of what I would call the modern and node-based workflow. So using node is slightly different than using a layer stack. So when we are using node, what we are doing is that we are having parallel approach between all the different software we are using. So when we are using nodes, we have a lot of software that are using nodes. We have like Maya, we have Katana, Nuke, Guerrilla, Unreal Engine. So all of these tools are using nodes in the similar fashion as what we are doing with Mari, which is a great thing, because if we understand it from one software point of view, we can understand it from all the other software point of view. So what's a node graph? What's a node within a node graph? So node graph is more of this horizontal approach. When you are using a node, you have one info per node. If you have one info per node, then you can really understand what you have inside of this node. So you have an educated guess of what's happening inside of this node. You know what this node is. So it's visual and it's very clear. What you are doing is basically enlightening yourself about what you have under your eyes. So it's visual and clear, and so should you be when you are doing your texturing inside of the node graph. You can sort things really easily. You can use backdrops, you can use groups, and you can use nodes as well. And also something about that's amazing about nodes is that it's totally reusable. So what about math nodes? So math, something that can be super scary. So it's whenever we're speaking about mathematicals, we start to be scared about like what can happen next. But here, whenever we need to think about math when we are doing texturing, we do not need to think about like complicated equation. What we need to think about is that we need to make sure that we restrain our brain to just simple operation. When I'm doing math in my texturing, what I'm doing is just like simple addition. Or I can do subtraction, or I can do multiplication. And that's about everything I'm doing with math when I'm doing my texturing. So something that is super important also when we are doing texturing is that we want to simplify our approach of texturing. So for example, when we are painting a mask. So a mask, we want to understand the value of the mask. But we also want to understand that these values are super simple and we need to simplify them. For example, if I'm using black, I will have a value of 0. If I'm painting some white data, I will have a value of 1. And then this mask is here to multiply the opacity of what happened before. So if I painted something at 0, it means that everything will disappear. If I painted something at 0.5, again, I'm using really simple values. I'm not using like complicated values. I'm using values that I can understand and that can help me to make sure that my mathematical operations inside of my node graph are not complicated. So we spoke about a little bit about like how to see the node graph and what's happening inside of a node graph and what's happening inside of a node. But now we'll speak a bit more about like the science, the actual science of texturing and how we can use that to understand how to sculpt a model or how to paint a model using the surface. So here we'll speak about the microfacet theory, which sounds kind of complicated, but at the same time is super easy to understand. So micro and facet. So if we cut this word into two different words, so micro and facet, the surface seen through a microscope. And that's really what we want to understand when we are doing texturing. So what the microfacet theory? So first, something that we want to have a look at is the surface. So the microfacet theory defines how your surface will look from the outside and how its specularity, how its quality will be, and what will be the quality of your surface. Specularity is a super important aspect of the microfacet theory. And in order to understand that, we need to understand what's a surface. So a surface, we can think about it as a plane or as the outer surface, as the outer volume of our model. So if we take a plane, just a simple plane, for example. So we have a look at this surface. This surface, if we want to create a mirror aspect, we'll just need to make sure that this surface is really flat. If the surface is flat, the normal of the surface will be flat as well, which means that the specularity will be glossy. On the opposite way, if we want to sculpt something that will be a bit more rough, and if we want to make sure that, for example, we are sculpting some skin that have a bit more details, and that is appearing to be really rough, what we'll have to do is that we'll have to break the surface, and we'll have to start a lot to start sculpting a lot of details on top of this surface. The more the surface is broken, the rougher your object will be. Then we need to think about the interaction of light. So light, whenever the light will bounce on the surface, it will interact with the volume of your model. If the volume has a lot of details, then the light will create also some shadow, and this shadow is as important as the light. So the more micro details also we will sculpt on the surface, the rougher the model will appear. So this is just like a quick introduction about the microfacet theory. And if you want to have a read at some more explanation about it and make sure that you can understand how the microfacet theory work, you can also have a look at the PBR guides, which is like a really great resource, and it will help you to understand a lot about how this works in details. But here, what I will do is I will also show you some example where this microfacet theory become more apparent. And it's not apparent only when we are looking at the surface through a microscope. This microfacet theory is appearing everywhere. And I told you at the beginning that I'm a sculptor, and whenever I need to sculpt a model, whenever I need to create a model, I approach it through my anatomist or sculptor point of view. So this microfacet theory, or this light and shadow effect, appear on every level of your sculpt. For example, you can have a look at the cat here that I have on this image. So what do we see on the first image? So on the first image, what we see is that we have a model that is slightly glossy, but we can already have a look at the details of the anatomy. So this is because I have a knowledge of anatomy, I have a knowledge of the first layer of volume of my model, and I want to make sure that I understand the surface quality thanks to this anatomical knowledge. What I can see on this image is that I can feel the bones, I can feel some of the muscles, I can feel also some of the cartilages, and I can do that because the specularity is showing me how this volume reflects, and is creating enough shadow so I can really see this kind of details on top of the model. So we have this first layer, but then of course we have the second layer if we want to create a model that will have more details, and if we want to create a model that will be slightly more realistic. What do we want to do? I want here to, if I'm having a look at the second image, what I want to do is I want to create some secondary volumes. So these secondary volumes are here to break the specularity. I can definitely feel them because they are starting to create some shadow effect, and they are also starting to break the highlights. They are breaking the linearity of the specular on top of the surface. And then, of course, the last layer is the micro details. So how to design a surface? How do we want to design a surface? How do we want to make sure that it's looking accurate? So simple answer is just like sculpt it and displace it. Make sure that this surface is looking as accurate as possible and as defined as possible. So you are creating the quality of the skin you want from the sculpting already. So anatomy is also one of your best tools and one of your best weapons whenever you need to tackle this kind of work. The more you understand anatomy, the more you will be able to show anatomy on the outside of the skin. If you want to work on models that have a lot of bone structure, then you need to make sure that you understand where those bones are before you are starting to create your texturing. Always make sure that whenever you're working on a model, you work on some kind of hierarchy of details. You start with the large volumes, then you work on the medium, then you go to the small details. And this will be this consistency that you will also bring inside of Mari once you will start to do your color. So from ZBrush to Mari, something that is really important is to make sure that you keep this consistency in mind. So I'm a sculptor and a material and surface or texture artist, meaning that whenever I'm working in Mari, what I want to do is I want to make sure that my model is looking the same between ZBrush, between my sculpting and my texturing packages. So for that, I'm playing with the light placement. I also reproduce the same material between my two softwares. I have the same material between ZBrush and between Mari. Sounds complicated, but it's just like a basic clay material. So that's also what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to simplify as much as possible my different approach. If I'm doing something in one software, I will try to reproduce the same exact thing in the other software, so I can really have this consistency. So this video will give you a quick overlook of how I'm preparing my scene whenever I need to start working on the details. So the goal here is first, create a generic material. So what I'm doing is that I'm just changing the color, the albedo, changing for mid-gray. Then I'm changing the specularity, getting something that is more in between. I do not want to fake the quality of the skin by using the roughness of my material. What I want to do is have a surface that is accurate. So for that, I'm using a roughness of 0.5. Then I'm just playing with the lights, making sure that I have different lights. So I'm using a 3-point scenario here. The idea is just to make sure that you see enough of the details, and again, that you have this cultural approach, this cultural feeling between your different softwares. So do not rely only on HDRI. HDRI are here, they are a good tool, but they are a tool that you want to use for making sure that your things are working for production only. But most of the time, what you want to use your HDRI is really to make sure that you can rim a little bit of light on the model. You can have a bit more color happening inside of your viewport. But you do not always need to be 100% accurate and making sure that you have an HDRI in the scene. So what about specularity now? So what you want to do with specularity is making sure that you let your skull do the hard work. So as we spoke before, you want to sculpt your primary details. Then you want to sculpt your medium details, your medium shape, and then your small details. So what you can do as well is you can isolate this specularity directly within Mari's viewports. And in order to do that, it's super easy. You will see that in the next video. But basically, you create a black material, and this black material will help to isolate only the specularity on top of the surface of your model. Once this specularity is isolated, that's when you can start adding more details. You can start painting maps, you can start projecting XYZ texture, for example, to have skin pores. Or you can use Procedural node in order to break the specularity directly within Mari and using Mari's tools. So something that is also super important is that you always need to make sure that you are matching ref. So if I'm painting a model and if I'm displacing a model, I will try to look for a material, or I will try to look for references that are matching to the kind of quality of skin that I'm trying to achieve. And I will try to look at darker version of this same reference so I can isolate visually the specularity and understand how this spec is bouncing on top of the surface. So here what I'm doing is that I'm starting to paint some texturing XYZ skin pores on top of the model. They are plugged as bump, so they will start to displace the surface. And thanks to this displacement and the intensity of this displacement, you will see that the model will start to appear rougher. And this is only because of the fact that the surface quality is accurate now. So if you want to break this specularity, again, use your sculpts, use your displacements, use information coming from the volume to make sure that your model is looking accurate. And see how easy it is to create like a really accurate version, really good version of the skin of a model by just projecting some texturing XYZ displacement on top of a model. So again, taking different pieces of texturing XYZ, and then I'm projecting them directly where they need to be. Something that is important is also to make sure that you understand the scale of the details. If you are painting skin pores too large, then the skin pores will start to appear slightly more glossy, and they will start to break the integrity of your model or the realistic look of your model. If you paint them too small, then your model will start to look slightly rougher because you have more high-frequency details. And as I told you, just make the material to start looking darker. You can add a bit of secondary specular if you want, but then that will help you to understand if the model is looking more accurate or not. Here, what I'm doing is that I'm playing with the intensity of the displacement. The more displacement I put on my model, again, the rougher the surface will be. So let's now start on the latest part of this presentation. So speaking a bit about procedural. So what's procedural? So when we are speaking about procedural, what we want to understand is that we want to have a repetitive and transferable approach of our texturing. We also want to make sure that we are non-destructive. And we want to have an educated and organic approach of our texturing. Always think about hierarchy of things. So if you scale from the large volumes to the medium and then the small details, you want to do exactly the same. You want to start with the primary colors, then the secondary, and then the tertiary. So, procedural approach. So what do we want to keep in our head whenever we are doing a procedural texturing? So, as I said, we want to layer our mind. We want to make sure that we prepare everything beforehand. So here, what I'm doing whenever I need to do an realistic texturing, or whenever I need to do a texturing that may be used or not for different assets, but I may want to reuse it, I will start by preparing my ISO. So ISO stands for isolation mask, which is basically, as we said before, black and white information. White equal visible, black equal invisible. So we have the ISOs that we are preparing by hand, can be isolation for region, but we also have the surface isolation mask. So for example, we can use cavity, we can use curvature, or we can use an edge detect, displacement, or whatever. What we want to do first is to prep our toys. Once we have our toys, it becomes super easy to do our procedural texturing. So you can do as isolation mask for everything. And again, it's super easy to do them. Basically, just a paintable node. You start to paint on it, and you have an isolation mask. You want to prepare them before, but you do not have to worry if your ISO are not available from the beginning. Because here, we are painting things on a node graph, meaning that we can create a node at the end of the hierarchy and then take it back to the beginning, and this will become one of our main isolation node. So, this is my approach whenever I need to start painting some colors. So I have this consistent approach that I'm trying to use to make sure that every time I'm repeating the same approach and it makes sense in my head. So I'm starting with a tileable node with a marble texture, for example. Then I'm connecting this node to a multiply. Then this node is multiplied by a color. And this will give me the first color of my texturing. Then I'm just copy-pasting these three nodes and redoing the same approach over and over until I get all the different hues of my texture. And then I'm connecting them using merge node, and I'm adding an isolation mask to make sure that they can be visible whenever I want. So as you can see on this example here, using the marble texture as the beginning for my texturing. And I've been using the same marble texture for 8 years, I think, or 9 years. And it still has been able to give me all the results I want. And it's a really simple, really easy approach to have whenever I'm doing my texturing. Then I multiply this marble texture by a color. This will give me the first view of my palette, and then I'm connecting a mask to this hierarchy of nodes, and this will reveal the area where my different colors will be available. So in video, this is what it looks like. Again, using this simple marble texture. First thing I've done, and I used to do that before, but no, I do not even care about like the UV seams anymore. I just leave them, and then they will be hidden by all the hierarchy of nodes anyway. So I'm starting to prepare my tile label texture and give it a hue, or making it as neutral as possible. Then I will create a color, and I will multiply my marble texture. I will create a mask, and then merge the tile label on top of the previously created color multiplication. And then I'm just redoing that. I'm doing that with a blue color, for example. Multiplication, create a mask, then merge it. I do not have to put an opacity of 100%. I can just like play with the different opacities. So I'm doing this operation over and over until I'm happy about all the different hues I picked. And this will become my first pass of albedo creation. So you want to make sure that you are always consistent with your approach. So you can understand as much as possible, and you can reuse as much as possible your texturing. But then, what do we do once we have this first pass, this primary color pass? So what we want to do is that we want to start by adding more volume. We want to start using the surface ISO mask. So we can start with the ambient occlusion, and then we can also use the curvature or the Mari displacement, so the bumps, the skin pores we painted before. And we can also use other nodes. So for example, we have the cloud nodes that is available in Mari. And I've been using that for, again, ages in order to give me a lot of vibrancy into my colors. So procedural mask that is plugged into a saturation adjustment. So again, I understand what I'm doing because every nodes are separated. Then this saturation is controlling also the brightness. And then once I have my different nodes that are creating a lot of vibrancy, then I'm using these clouds nodes, and I'm connecting them as mask, so they can create this vibrancy only in certain area. Again, I work from the primary to the secondary, so whenever I need to create a primary cloud, then I will also create a secondary cloud that is sharper. So primary will be broader, as I'm doing with my sculpting. I create broad volumes, then I create slightly sharper volumes. So I will do the same with my clouds. I will create a broad cloud that is brighter. Then I will create a small and sharper cloud that is darker. And if I'm doing that, I'm always trying to balance things. If I'm creating darker clouds, I will also create a bright clouds and have the same approach. Then the final pass will be to start using the displacements. So with the displacement, what I'm doing is that I'm bringing the displacement, or I'm bringing the cavity mask. And the cavity will be here, for example, to control the saturation. Let's say that I want to get more saturation inside of the cavity. So I will use a brightness lookup, start to contrast a bit my cavity, invert it so I can have the inside of the cavity that will be white and the outside that will be black. And once I have this mask, I just need to plug it within a merge and make sure that the saturation is showing only inside of the cavity. And I can do the opposite. If I'm using saturation, if I'm using this mask to create some darker saturation inside of the cavities, then again, I will balance it with a brighter and unsaturation pass. And this brighter and unsaturation pass will be appearing on the outside of the cavity. And finally, bringing the texturing swayze in to make sure that I get all the skin pores that are visible within my albedo. So this is how you can do procedural texturing inside of Mari. And once you have that, something that is amazing is that this project, where everything has been created procedurally, can be 100% reusable. And this is what I've done all these years. Whenever I've been created a texturing, I do not need to start from scratch, because I always have a project that is already built with everything procedural in it. So if, for example, I need to create a new creature, or if I start with a cat and then I need to create a dog or a lion or whatever, even a human, I will be using the same project. I will just have to upload a new version of my object, recreate my isolation mask, and then my texturing will be automatically reapplied to my model. So once you have this universal material, what you can do is you can reuse it, and you can customize it as much as you want. So again, something that is amazing about Mari's viewport and Mari in general is that you can do your pre-look dev directly within Mari. You can start to plug nodes inside of materials or inside of surface shader. Once you have your nodes that are plugged on top of your surface shader, that's where you can start to have a look at what your texturing will be once you render it within your render packages. You can play as much as you want with connections. And you can confirm that your microfacet theory is looking right and is working. So time to conclude this presentation. So again, we came from the simplicity of what a node is and how we can understand nodes to a comprehensive aspect of surfacing. So Mari seems scary at first look, but it leads to perfect mastering of your craft. So the more you understand what you are doing in Mari, the more you will be empowered to make sure that you can do all the texturing that you want. So knowledge is power with Mari. Using nodes is super important for you to make sure that you clarify what's happening in your mind. Nodes are equal to clarity, and node graph are equal to organization. You want to keep that in mind when you are doing your texturing. So the microfacet theory is something that is super important that will help you along your career to understand how to create all the different aspects of a surface. So the surface is your guide. It will be what will guide the color information. It will be what will guide also the specularity of your model. And it will be what will be able to help you to achieve everything that you want in terms of creature, in terms of hard surface, or whatever surface you want to develop. Mari is one of the best tools you can use to confirm that your microfacet theory is working. Always keep in mind when you are doing your texturing that consistency and simplicity is key. Repetition leads to mastering of your craft. So the more you understand something, the more you understand how you need to do your texturing, the more you understand what you have inside of the nodes, the more you will be able to achieve. So always go through simple steps. Have an organic approach of your texturing. Work from big to small, from large to details. And then you will be able to develop all the material that you want and to have your own universal material. So this is it for this presentation. Thanks a lot for listening to me, and this is time for a Q&A. Yes.
So the radio node is a part of Mari extension pack. It does not ship with vanilla Mari. By vanilla, I mean, Foundry Mari. The radio node is limited in terms of how you can use it. You can only use it on the same level. So that means in the node graph, if you have a material or a group, you can only use the radio node within, if it's in the group, it only works within the group. The teleport node broadcasts inside and outside of groups, and you can put, a group inside of a group, inside of a group, inside of a group, and it's still gonna work. The teleport node also goes a little bit further, and you can actually export it within a material as well. So if Gael created his awesome procedural skin material and then he sent it over to me, if I imported that into my project and he had a teleport node that was looking for curvature in there, as soon as I imported it into my project, if curvature exists, it just connects up. So that is the difference between them.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, so Mari has had a material system since 4.5, yeah. So you can create a material, you can export it out, you can share it with different artists. They live in your shelf palette. In terms of our equivalent of something like smart masks, we have custom procedurals. They, again, will live in your shelf, and there's a few different types of custom procedural that you have. We do ship with some default Mari materials. I would call them a guide, I guess. It really comes down to kind of what Gael's saying. We don't really want to give you the solution in Mari because one solution is not all for every studio. You don't have gold material and then every studio uses it the same. That's not how it works, unfortunately, with Mari. So we really use the material system as something that you can customize yourself. So you can really go into the node graph. You can go and create your gold for one specific shader. Say if you're working at a studio that uses, say, Arnold, you can create your gold for Arnold. And then if you changed roles at some point and you want to transition that over to something that has like RenderMan, then you can do that. And yes, you can include the custom procedurals as part of that and have those masks and really, really build up some advanced materials there. Hopefully that answers your question. You have another question?
So yeah, that's a good question. It always depends on the scale of the production or the scale of the project you're working on, I will say. Like if you have time to get through different passes of different details, you can have a combination of ZBrush details, high frequency details that are done within ZBrush. And then you can go over in Mari, pen some additional details and so on. And then you can import them back in ZBrush, start sculpting over on top of them. What is super important is also that you find a way to import these details within Mari so you can start painting them, or you can find a mask to paint them. And there are different ways of doing that. Like what you can do, for example, is that you can export a ZBrush displacement map. It can be a 32-bit map. Can be a 16-bit map, doesn't really matter. What you want to do is that you want to do a high pass so you can isolate these details. And once you have this high pass with these details, you will be able to use them as masks because you will have all the tiny details that are available. And you can create a lot of different masks, for example. You can have like the large ZBrush displacement, you can have the micro ZBrush displacement, and all these different passes that you will use for different parts of your texturing. If you want to layer different displacements, it's something that is taking a lot of time. It's something that is super production heavy, and that's why most of the time when I don't need to do that, I'm trying to do it directly within Mari, because you've seen how quick it is in Mari. I can just import the texture in XYZ, pen through it, and project it. But sometimes I do not have access to texturing XYZ maps that are, for example, the kind of quality I want to have from my surface, for my surface quality. So I will sculpt a lot of details in ZBrush, then I will export that as displacement so I can find them directly within my Mari session. And then I will leave some areas that are empty so I can do some projection within Mari. or I can try to combine them. But if I combine them, one way or another, at one point you will have to make sure that you import your displacements within ZBrush, you see where they overlap, you erase what you need to erase. Do not hesitate to use brute force, because sometimes you have to use brute force, which means that you have to try to sculpt everything. And then once you have that, again, just export it as an isolation mask and use that for your texturing. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question also. And that's maybe something I will need to do a tutorial about. It's something that you can do, and not a lot of people are doing that. Like most of the time when we are exporting a ZBrush displacement, is that we are just exporting the ZBrush displacement 32-bit mid value at 0, and then it will do its work with, within the rendering packages. But there are a lot of ways of customizing a ZBrush displacement. Like you can import it in Nuke, and in Nuke you can offset the value, and then you can grade it. Once you have this grading that is done, you can, for example, isolate the frequency of details you want. For example, also something that you can do within Nuke is that you can do high pass, and that's also something I may need to do a tutorial about, because it's not that easy to explain and maybe more visual than I would like. But you can do a high pass and then subtract your primary displacement from this high pass. So you isolate only the tiny details. Then you offset again the mid value, so you have a mid value of 0.5, and you have these tiny details that are available in grayscale for you, and you can import them in Mari. So do not hesitate to create masks with a lot of different softwares. Like you can create them also directly within ZBrush. I showed something on my station at one point, which was how to create a curvature mask using ZBrush. And it's basically you going in ZBrush, doing mask auto-masking by, I think it's by cavity. You linear the curve of the ZBrush auto-masking feature, and then you use an intensity of 10 or 20, something like that. Go on my ArtStation if you want, you will see the tutorial is super easy to follow. And you can use that to create your curvature mask. And you have a curvature mask that has been created directly within ZBrush, so you do not need to use another package to do that. Yes? Yeah. Yes, you can do that in ZBrush. You do not need to use another package, but people don't know about it. So yes, you do not need to use another texturing, surfacing packages to do that. You can, what you really want to understand is how to create your own curvature mask, or your own, how to grade your different masks. And Nuke is a good solution for that. You can do that directly also within ZBrush. Sometimes I create a lot of different masks, and because I'm just like too, I do not want to spend time importing the model, trying to export the model so it can be read by a substance painter. We said it. Sorry. I'm just painting the mask directly within ZBrush, exporting that as a polypaint map and importing in Mari. Yes. Which, yeah. So I do not have a tutorial for the thing I'm doing in Nuke.
You can make him make one.
Okay, so that's I will put that on the request list for after this talk, and maybe I will be able to create a tutorial on how to customize a displacement map in Nuke and create a high pass and this kind of technical stuff. Yes.
Just to say as well, if you guys don't have alternative options, there is a curvature node inside of Mari that can give you a bit of an estimate as what you're looking for before you go to the extent of baking things out. We also do have an estimation of ambient occlusion. If you go to the objects palette and then run AO, you can create an AO node, and that will use it there. I know Gael's used that before in the past as well. Yes, I can't say anything else, but yes, definitely try those out. And if you guys have workflows like that, where you find yourself thinking, maybe I need to go and use an alternative, or maybe I need more information, more tutorials on this, please do come and tell me. You are welcome to grab me afterwards. You are welcome to add me on LinkedIn and pester me. I love that. Please do. I'm not always the best at responding, but I'm reading them, I promise. And we are talking about them at with the Mari team. So yeah, please do that. Yes.
For me or for John? For me or for John?
And I'm the boring one.
Yes. Yeah.
It's pretty hard to integrate those into poly mesh, but of course you cannot import like 100 million polygon mesh into detection software. So
No, don't do it.
Mari can handle a good amount. But yeah,
You also, something that people forget to do is that, you know, you can decimate your model and keep the UVs before you import your model in Mari. Yeah. So as you said, it's complicated to paint when the model has a lot of three-dimensional displacement and things that are overlapping. And it's not the best way of doing your texturing, but also it doesn't really matter because you are doing procedural texturing, so you're not going to have to paint things. So yeah, it doesn't really matter. You can have them. If you want to paint, and the way I'm doing it, so for example, let's say I'm like painting this T-Rex and I want to isolate these different bits and pieces on the chest that are starting to overlap and have a lot of details. What I will do is I will not import the model with all these details because it's way too heavy, I think. But what I will do is that I will paint my mask directly within ZBrush. And within ZBrush, it's super easy to follow the surface because that's how the tool has been made. And you export a mask out of that, then you can import your mask, and your mask will take care about like the high displacement values that you will get here. So that's a way of doing it. Again, a lot of different ways of tackling these different these different issues. You can also import a version of the model where these details are smoother and they are not 100% overlapping. And once you have that, it's easier for you to paint on and to make sure that you have all the colors, all the values that you want. And then when you will render this model with all the details, you can have different versions in Mari. You can have version with all these overlappings, and you can have the version without the overlappings. And you can paint between the two. So that's what is super cool about Mari, is that you can have as many versions as you want and as many level of definition as you want. And you can swap super easily between the different versions.
Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you have a really awesome rest of the week. And yeah, do catch up with us if you want to. I will be around till Friday. I believe you're only around till the end of the day. Is that right, Gail? Yeah. Oh, have a lovely day, guys. Thank you.